devastating injury to Trey Lance, 49ers franchise quarterback. You'll get all the information about how the 49ers played and how the injury is going to turn out to be right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Welcome back to another episode of the 49ers RedZone podcast. This is your host, Marco, with my co-host, Rohan. How's it going, Rohan?
I'm doing good. It's what I said in the title. It's a gloomy victory Monday. That's what I'm going to call today because the 49ers did win 27-7, a crazy win for the 49ers in terms of, getting back on track. But overall, I'd consider it a gloomy win because there was some bad news.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with how you titled this today. Just looking at the 49ers, right? It's one of those rough situations because obviously you get the win, but a freak injury happens to your franchise quarterback. Situations happen. Now I don't know whether to be excited for the rest of this season. Devastated for Trey Lance, obviously, but I don't understand how I should feel still to this day. Like even after it's been 24 hours since the injury, I don't know how I really feel. How do you feel about everything, Rohan? Like when it hit you and everything, what went through your head? Like, or how do you feel
It's
now?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When we saw it live and when it happened, I did yell a few words that I can't say on here. Not yell, but I was just like, "Damn," because it's about the injury, right? You feel bad for a kid who's gone through as much as he's gone through, and now has another obstacle, kind of another setback that he has to deal with on top of the overwhelming amount of criticism and everything he's dealt with this offseason. Now you've got an injury, even more questions that come with the injury, and you just feel bad for him because the outlook was looking good, right? And now we face this injury, and he is out for the season, and the 49ers season entirely changes within just that one play.
I absolutely agree. I said some words and I in frustration, right? When it happened, let's go straight to it. Not the quarterback situation. Let's talk a little about the defense. The defense played a phenomenal game, and then we'll get into the Trey Lance and the offense, which is the meat of probably the show, right? That's probably going to be what we mainly talk about in a sense of the 49ers just lost their franchise quarterback, and they're handing it over to the backup quarterback they kept on the roster. What did you see from the defense, Rohan, in terms of what the 49ers look like and how the defense is going to keep going moving forward?
I saw discipline and what we expected the 49ers defense to look like. In week one, the 49ers defense was locked down in the first half. They didn't allow a single point to Justin Fields and company in a way that was somewhat expected, but it was a good performance, not only in the run game, stopping David Montgomery, who I believe rushed for under 2 yards a carry on significant volume. It was about 15 to 17 carries, if I'm not mistaken. Good volume, and the 49ers shut it down. But in the second half, they weren't disciplined. Several penalties, prolonged Chicago drives, allowing them to score. There were 3 touchdown drives for the Chicago Bears last weekend. And on all 3 of the drives, there was at least one penalty that led to the drive being prolonged and eventually the Chicago Bears scoring a touchdown. So to me, I like the lack of discipline. I believe the 49ers only had one penalty in the entire game on Sunday. But overall, it was a good performance from all 3 levels of the field. Last week, obviously, Drake Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shire were a bit of the problem with the penalties. Drake Greenlaw didn't have a clean game this week. You look at the defensive line, right? It was a pretty solid performance overall, forcing Geno Smith to get the ball out quick. Cornerbacks were wrapping up on tackles and also playing good coverage. The lockdown duo of Travarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley seemed pretty good. Mosley committed the penalty, obviously the pass interference, in which he was a tad bit early, but you like aggressiveness from your corners rather than the timidness and conservativeness that allows receivers to get catches. It's a receiver dominant league. So I was fine with the penalty that Mosley committed. If he's a half second later, that's a PBU. But we got to talk about the star of the defense that has emerged and what we saw in training camp. The outlook looking good. Second year safety Talanoa Hufanga. I know Marco here has been hammering that all offseason. He was the one who said we shouldn't bring back Jaquiski Tart. I said we should bring back Tart, but it wasn't an insult towards Hufanga. Marco, go ahead and speak on why you thought that and where you're right.
So the thing is I'm not trying to have like a victory lap and say I'm right? Like I'm really not. I really don't want to do that. But what I want to do is, from what I saw from the very first preseason of Talanoa Hufanga, I was there preseason last year, or not preseason, training camp last year a lot. And the first thing I noticed was Talanoa Hufanga was around the ball constantly. He was constantly getting his hands on the ball, whether it was a deflection or stuff like that. He was constantly around the ball, making plays in the backfield, making plays on balls. And from what I've seen from numerous of players, is players that are great, they're around the ball often. They're constantly around the ball. No matter what it is, they're constantly being in good position, and people are like, oh, it's luck. No, that stuff's not luck. That's called being a player who is constantly around the ball. That means you are a good player, to be honest. It's not luck, in my opinion. Now, everyone talked about Hufanga's inability to play single high, and I always have said that. I've always said he can't play single high. I don't get why you guys are mentioning that, because no one believes he can play single high. He knows his ability, and he knows that at single high he's going to have to be very instinctual. He's going to have to be reacting a lot faster than he does inside the box. Now, what I did notice from him his first year and in college was he was one of the most instinctual players I've seen in a very long time. He was a guy who he knows what the defense is trying to do against him because of his inabilities. So he knows how to react before the offense reacts. Like, that's something a young, smart player does, is know your abilities and know how defenses are trying to attack you. And he does that better than most players I've ever seen. And I shouldn't say I've ever seen, because I've seen players do it, but like for a young player, I should say, because most of the time it takes players a couple of years to understand how defenses are trying to attack them. And I think what he's showing within the last 2 weeks, his ability to fit the run, his ability to cover. I believe on one of the plays he was covering Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, so yeah, the receiver out of the slot, Lockett. Yeah,
to put him in the slot is to put trust on him to cover a fast, shifty receiver is very interesting. And then to see him get his hands on a ball that ends up in an interception, I thought Talanoa Hufanga looked like the MVP of the defense. And he actually has been the MVP of the defense the last 2 weeks, even with how good of Nick Bosa has been playing, Fred Warner's been playing. He is the MVP of this defense as of right now, and I think it's very good to see a young player get into that mode, especially with Jimmy Ward coming back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it with the analysis, right? When you talk about Talanoa Hufanga, the thing we've been hammering is the instincts. He's an instinctual player. He's not necessarily a player who is going to beat you right in the deep end. And the 49ers have done very well. D'Amico Ryan's got to give him credit for the role that he's placed Hufanga in. You see him a lot with that robber role, where it's really purely an instinctual role with the amount of different responsibilities that you have with that role. And so to me, I think that Talanoa Hufanga, yeah, he's done a good job with that role. And also, that's the reason the 49ers brought Tashawn Gibson in and really brought him up and have started him at safety the past 2 weeks, because they needed a player who could at least man that single high role until Jimmy Ward comes back. You see Tashawn Gibson in a ton, and he's in that single high role a good amount. So to me, yeah, Talanoa Hufanga fills in the run very well. And even when he's not making the tackle, he's at least containing. I saw a play where it seemed like Hufanga missed the tackle, but he bursted in towards, I think it was the C gap, if I'm not mistaken, bursted in towards the C gap, The running back had to shift towards the inside, and he was eaten up by the defensive line. That was Rashad Penny yesterday, and Hufanga is he's just been consistent, right? In the early part of the offseason, I was a proponent for bringing Jaquaski Tartt back, and it wasn't something against Hufanga. I'd like to see that 3 safety rotation, but once we heard exactly what was coming out of OTAs, all the reports out of OTAs about the team liking Hufanga, about the growth of Hufanga as a player, that's where really the mindset shifted and where you start to realize what the 49ers have in that player. And the biggest thing about Hufanga, everybody talks about his 4.6 speed, but his short-term accelerate or short-term burst, that's legit. That isn't 4.6 speed. That quick burst, that 10-yard split that Hufanga has is as good as people that you can name. You saw it on the PBU that led to the interception. He broke on the play immediately, kept up with the receiver, and really read where the quarterback was going to place that football in a pretty solid on a pretty solid place ball, deflects it, and Tashawn Gibson intercepts it. Good overall game for Talanoa Hufanga, and I actually agree that he's been the MVP for the 49ers on that defense.
So I absolutely agree. So Talanoa Hufanga is a stud. Now going to the D line, I thought the D line played a hell of a game, right? The defensive line, obviously, they had, I believe it was 14 of his 30 something dropbacks. He was pressured. Geno Smith was. I had to go back and
Something
double
like
check.
that. Yeah, it was a good amount.
So the fact that they're getting this much pressure, and I said on the preview that 49ers are going to blow them out. I said the 49ers would blow them out. I said the starting offense from Seattle won't even score 14 points. I mean, the starting offense didn't even score a point, right? Like they needed their special teams to have a block punt touchdown in order to put points on the board. That just shows how dominant the defense was as a whole, especially when you are a disciplined defense and you don't give up those extra penalties. Just the ability that this defense has. Now, talk to me about what the 49ers need to continue to do defensively to keep them at that top notch, losing a quarterback like Trey Lance, because obviously you go to Jimmy Garoppolo. So your offense is going to change, right? The philosophy is going to change. Yeah. You're not going to be taking the deeper shots. You're going to be kind of more so in terms of offense. It's going to be more run heavy, dink and dunk, kind of be efficient and beat defenses in that way versus with Trey Lance was going to be a run heavy. When the time presents itself, you're taking shots, pushing the ball downfield, which creates more explosive plays, in my opinion. So talk to me about what the defense needs to do in order to back the offense up more. Do they need to step up even more, or do they need to stay the same what they were in order for the 49ers to be successful?
Yeah, and before I continue, got to give a shout out to Rick, 49ers Throwback, and to Nick, all for tuning in. Thank you guys. We appreciate the support. But about what the defense needs to do now, I think there is an intensified amount of pressure on the defense with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, because it's not that the offensive scheme necessarily changes, but it might be a little more of a stagnant offense as Kyle Shanahan reverts back to the system that he utilized last year, in the fact that I think the box is going to be stacked. We talked about this off camera. I think the box is going to be stacked more often than not because the 49ers are going to be dared to throw that ball, especially throw that ball deep. And we did see Jimmy Garoppolo look to throw deep on a couple of occasions. I mean, Ross Dwelly's was wide open. We saw the Brandon Ayuk 40-yard back shoulder fade, but I think the defensive responsibilities increase. Now, do I think that changes too much? Not necessarily, because the defense has really been playing fairly well so far. They had one bad half of football in that first game in the second half where they allowed, I believe it was like 6 yards per play. But in the entirety of the Seahawks game, in the first half of the Bears game, they've been good, and they need to just continue to keep those performances up. The only thing that you wonder is, will this defense get tired if they're on the field too long, if the offense is stalling drives? That's where that intensified pressure comes from, and that's where we have to see how does the defense respond to that.
So what's interesting is, the conversation, right, it starts to shift. Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, like how does the offense change, and like what is the dynamic of it? But like looking at the offense, I think Nick Ramos says it best, right? Credit to Jimmy for stepping in, and I guess, but can't lose when the defense gives up 0 points, which is absolutely true, right? The defense gave up 0 points. The 49ers offense led by Trey Lance had 6 points. Kind of hard to argue that that Trey Lance wasn't going to keep putting up points 2 drives back to back. He had 143 yards in total offense in 2 drives. That's pretty legit offense, right? In 2 drives, 143
Right.
offense. The remaining of the game, Rohan, as soon as Pete Carroll adjusted, 230 yards total offense from the 49ers offense. Now, if we look at what Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, that first drive he comes out, he fires away. But it's not really, in my opinion, him firing away because there were wide open throws, right? Like we really saw some wide open throws. One wide open throw to Ray McLeod, another touchdown throw, wide open throw to Ross Dwelly. So it wasn't like Jimmy Garoppolo was picking apart that defense. He was just going to the right read, which to me, it blows my mind that there's fans out there saying, oh, he played way better than Trey Lance. No, Trey Lance never had the opportunity to actually throw the ball in that game because the 49ers were running the ball at 10 yards a clip, which means if you're running 10 yards a clip, why go away from the run at that point and then open it up the offense that next drive? So for me, it was one of those. It was one of those ones where I think the offense kind of died down because of they started putting 8 men in the box. They said, hey, you know what? We're going to have Jimmy beat us after that Jimmy 70-yard touchdown drive where he hit on some wide open throws and big completions. And then as soon as that happened, the offense goes, break 150 yards the remainder of that game. So Jimmy's first drive, the defense of Seattle did not know how to defend that kind of offense. They were expecting it to be a little bit more of a traditional style Jimmy, but Kyle came out and he ran the same plays he would have ran with Trey Lance, pushing the ball downfield, play action, knowing that the defense was going to suck in because they were averaging 10 yards a carry. They throw the ball, touchdown for 75 yards eventually. So to me, what the offense showed after was very scary, no matter how anyone puts it, because the offense was moving with Trey. Obviously, they scored with Jimmy Garoppolo, but one of those touchdown drives that they scored, they got the ball at the 22-yard line. So to me, I thought the offense was a problem on Sunday against a very bad defense after Jimmy Garoppolo came in.
I actually think I agree. And Sunil brought up a tweet of his that on our show earlier today. What he said was he thought that the Jimmy Garoppolo offense was moving, right? To me, I kind of disagreed. You brought up the stat. The 49ers had 143 yards of they had 143 yards of offense on the 2 drives that Trey Lance was there. Many complained about the play calling. I thought the play calling on those drives was great. If you're moving the ball, something I criticized Kyle Shanahan for last week that I wanted to see happen this week was stick to what is working. People asked, well, what if defenses adjust? The Seattle Seahawks could not adjust on those first 2 drives when the 49ers continued to run the ball, be it with Lance, Deebo Samuel, or Jeff Wilson Jr. or TDP. They continued to run the ball, and it was working well. That's why the game plan was as it was. I do think that the Jimmy Garoppolo offense did stall. And the interesting thing when watching the All-22, to avoid some of those stacked boxes, the 49ers actually went in empty sets for Jimmy Garoppolo to essentially eliminate the threat of a run so that you don't necessarily have those stacked boxes. In a way, Kyle Shanahan responded to the Seahawks daring him to pass early. I'm watching in the second quarter, and that's you see a couple of those empty sets. And this kind of leads me into a question that I've been receiving a lot, and I actually have a take that I don't think many have. I'm interested to hear your take. Nicholas Ramos here asked, do you all believe Kyle when he said the script didn't change after throwing 4 in a row after Trey went down? I actually think he was telling the truth. What do you think?
So the script did not change.
Yeah,
the reason
I agree.
is because I'll tell you exactly why the script did not change when he threw 4 in a row after Trey went down. So you already had that defense. The linebackers were so sucked up, right? You're giving up 10 yards of carry. Any play action is going to get that entire defense to literally collapse. So with what Trey Lance's offense did was created the play action that you needed for Jimmy Garoppolo to dial up those wide open throws. Now, why go away? Why run the ball knowing that the defense knows you're going to run the ball the third drive?
Exactly.
You already have 108 yards in 2 drives. You averaged literally 50 yards or roughly 50 yards if we do the math. I'm more on one drive than the other because Jimmy Garoppolo had a big 30-yard throw to Brandon Ayuk. Well, Brandon Ayuk had a lot of yards after the catch and whatnot, but you had a 50-yard 2 yards, you rush for 50 yards. Why would you not play action, throw a wide open pass to Ross Dwelly? Why would you not take those shots to Ray McCloud on play action? To me, it just sounds like a lot of people are upset that the fact that Kyle called those plays because it was Jimmy Garoppolo and not Trey Lance. But I think he would have called the same game plan for Trey Lance after Trey before Trey went out. So I think a lot of people have a misconception that Kyle was lying because Jimmy Garoppolo was in or Trey Lance was in. I think that's bogus. I really do believe Kyle was being honest, saying he kept the same script for that drive and going into half.
I agree. I think the whole point of yesterday's formula, especially because Seattle has had a tendency to try and stop the run, establish that run game, put fear into the Seattle defense, and then when they made adjustments, you then make adjustments yourself. And I thought that the 49ers would have run with those same plays because it wasn't Jimmy Garoppolo making different throws. It was open throws that Jimmy Garoppolo was making because Kyle Shanahan was scheming receivers open. The Dwelly touchdown you talk about. Really, in general, those 4 throws. And when you look at game script, I also thought it was more sensible for Jimmy Garoppolo to throw some of the passes that he did. You first talk about the 3rd and 6 when he comes in. It's 3rd down. You're gonna throw that football, and then he had an incompletion on 1st down that was the PI, and then the next throw that he had was 2nd and 14, which is in a way a throwing situation. And then 2 plays later, after a quick crosser to Brandon Ayuk, I believe, where he got the 12 yards after the catch, you then hit Ray McCloud on that out route on 3rd and 2, where they're expecting you to run, stacking the box. So what do? You go against them, utilize their man coverage, find an open receiver, then you hit Ross Dwelly. I thought that game plan would have been used for Trey Lance. Maybe Trey Lance takes off on one of those plays, so it looks a little different. But I actually thought that the script did not change, at least initially, early on, when Jimmy Garoppolo entered the game for Trey Lance. I honestly thought that would have been a similar game plan for Trey Lance.
Now, if you ask me, did the game script change a couple drives after Jimmy came in? I would say yeah, because at that point, I believe Seattle actually completely changed their defensive philosophy and on how to play the 49ers. You see right away, they start creeping up towards the line of scrimmage or kind of stacking that box. And it was more so a Jimmy, yeah, hey, we know what you are. We've played against you for a couple years now. We're going to stack the box. Can you beat us with your arm? After those drives, right, Jimmy Garoppolo had only 52 yards of passing. So what do you say at that point? I mean, the argument could be, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't had the reps with the ones, but I mean, you're an 8-year veteran, 9-year veteran, whatever the case may be. You would think you're coming in and you're firing away and stuff like that. So it's hard, Rohan. But
it is. I know you're not going to give him much slack. I'm going to give him a little slack, given that he did come into a game plan in which he was the scout team quarterback, so he had no reps with the first team offense. He is a veteran, so that slack you kind of got to balance how you give it out. But I'll give a little bit of slack given the situation, but still, yeah.
The reason why I don't give him slack is because last year when Jimmy Garoppolo against Seattle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
everyone literally said it doesn't matter. He should have known the game plan. Like literally, that's exactly what they're saying. Like, oh, you're a backup quarterback for a reason. Know the game plan. Jimmy Garoppolo is a backup quarterback for a reason. Know the game plan, right? He was always the emergency quarterback. Know the game plan. Why do we have to adjust everything for you? Why can't you just come in and run the same game plan as the starting quarterback? Maybe because the starting quarterback provides a little bit more than you, which is okay because that starting quarterback was drafted 3rd overall. So for me, it's rough, but I'm going to have to ask this question to you, Rohan. Is it Kyle Shanahan's fault for Trey Lance's injury?
No, it's not. And here's why. Look, I've had my criticisms of Kyle Shanahan. I do believe, though, he's a good head coach. And I'll say 2 things with the Kyle Shanahan Trey Lance debacle. First, I don't think it's Kyle Shanahan's fault that he was injured on that play. The 49ers did run that play 2 times before. Or 2 plays before that resulted in the Deebo Samuel touchdown. Coincidentally, I actually thought on live TV that he should have kept that one and then handed off the one that he kept, handed that one off to McCloud. But the plays resulted as the plays resulted. And to me, what I texted you last night, one of Trey Lance's abilities, one of his biggest abilities, is his ability to run in between the tackles. on that option play, or at least his ability to be an option quarterback as well. You utilize those legs. And I'm not saying just run Trey Lance on the option in between the tackles and consistently get him to face hits. But Trey Lance, I feel, understands that that is a strength of his. And with a quarterback that is developing as he goes, with limited game experience, with some accuracy concerns as well, I think that you have to utilize that facet of the game if he is going to be your starting quarterback. Kyle Shanahan said he wanted to play 11 on 11 football. And I'm not saying that means utilize Lance only as a runner. I'm just saying do what the game script dictates you to do. And so to me, in this game, especially with him only rushing 3 times, I'm not necessarily as I don't give Kyle Shanahan much blame for this. It was a freak injury. The injury just happened. It wasn't a concussion where he got hit by a linebacker coming in. It was a freak injury to his ankle, and that's why it really sucks, because it wasn't something that you could control necessarily. To me, it's just an injury that happened, and it really sucks that he's out for the year. Hence the gloomy Victory Monday. But one thing that I do want to say, I don't think it's healthy for Kyle Shanahan to consistently only use that option, QB option run in between the tackles. I do think Trey Lance can work at a zone read, and I do think that he also does need to improve a little with some of those reads in zone read. But it is a strength of his. I don't think you can deny it. And if that's not a part of his game, then there are serious things, not serious, but there are things that he needs to improve on. But since it is, utilize it, get him and get Shanahan comfortable with the game flow before really opening up that playbook. I do, though, I am a little uncomfortable with the usage that Shanahan is reverting to with the amount of those type of runs.
So then that follows up before I answer that question. The follow up answer would obviously be, was Lance's run usage affected by Jimmy being an insurance policy, right? Because everyone is arguing that question where they're like, oh, well, is it Kyle Shanahan's fault for that usage being so high? So my argument to everyone, because I don't think it's Kyle Shanahan's fault. I don't think it's Trey Lance's fault. I've seen people put the blame on Trey Lance. I think it's just a freak injury. But I've seen floating around, there's a narrative saying that the usage rate of Trey Lance, which was 19 carries, 19% of his plays have been carries by him. So I'm going to go ahead and argue against this. And I'm not trying to defend Kyle Shanahan, but I'm trying to put context with everything, because at the end of the day, context matters. And a lot of people kind of just want to put the blame game on someone. So if we look at Trey Lance, his first career start against Arizona, Trey Lance has said that his finger was such a big injury to him that he did not have the accuracy. He did not have the ability to throw with that index finger, right? So a lot of people forget about that injury. That is the reason why he has 16 rushes in that game, because Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance both agreed that his finger wasn't healthy enough for him to actually throw the ball like he wanted to. If we look at the game, we've seen Trey Lance actually healthy, 100% healthy, in good weather conditions, because last week, weather conditions, they actually called for 13 rushes. If you look at the weather, it calls for a running quarterback to run the ball 13 times. Now, if you look at Houston, which is the only game we've got to see from Trey Lance fully healthy in good weather conditions, he actually only ran the ball 8 times. And out of those 8 times, if I go back and double check my math, I counted six of those designed runs. 2 of them were scrambles. I have to go back and double check. It could be 7 designed, 1 scramble.
I believe it was 6, but from
I
what
thought
I
it was
remember.
6. I thought it was 6. I tried doing the math real quick before we jumped on, and actually looking at all the plays that I was watching. So the fact that I seen Kyle Shanahan call a game against Houston with only 8 designed runs, which was in one of the most crucial situations Trey Lance could play, because if the 49ers lose that game, they don't make the playoffs. Yet
Right.
he only ran him 8 times. So for
Right.
me to believe that Kyle was going to run him even more throughout the rest of the season, 13 times, 16 times a game, I don't buy it. I really don't, because looking at him against Houston, he actually let him throw it. Looking at him against the Bears last week, he let him throw the ball 28 times. Like, that is not something Kyle was going to be like, hey, well, I only want him to run. I thought Kyle did a pretty decent job of letting him run the ball while also letting him throw it, because he threw 28 times, and I believe against the Houston Texans, I believe he threw it 24
24.
times.
24,
So
16 to 24, yeah.
So he was letting him throw the ball. I think it's a lot of people are getting carried away with the rush attempts. That if you take away the 16 rush attempts and you put it around 12, right? And that was because of a finger ligament that he was affected by. I think that's what's skewing these data points, because he had 16 rushes against Arizona and then 13 last week, which is kind of weird because last week was a monsoon. But I'm just trying to explain to everyone that a finger injury was the cause of 16 rushes on one game. A monsoon was a cause for 13 rushes that game. But if we look at the
Right.
game that he was fully healthy, he only had 8 carries. So it's like, what was Kyle really going to use him like? Was he going to use him as a running, or was he going to use him as an 8 carry, which is pretty decent for what the quarterbacks rush the ball usually? And I thought Kyle Shanahan was going to open up the playbook after the second drive and start letting it rip, because he had that defense where he wanted him. He had him on the ropes.
Exactly.
It's just hard to see. It's just hard.
I think it's the exact same thing. That's why we both said that we weren't. We do believe Kyle Shanahan, and that the game script didn't really change when Garoppolo came in. I thought that would have been a similar situation to Lance, and he might even pass a little more, given that Seattle likely doesn't dare him to run as much as they did and shut down the run game as much as they did. But when you talk about the Trey Lance stat with rushing, a lot of people put out this stat that Trey Lance has rushed 13.2 times in his 3 starts on average, or in his 4 starts on average. To me, I don't like that stat because it's so out of context. You just brought up the entirety of the context, where I hate giving excuses as well, but context is required. When you have a monsoon game, you're going to run the football more. When you have the injury to Lance's finger, he still dropped back and threw 29 times in that game. And 4 of those 16 carries were also scrambles. So he dropped back 33 times in that game. He did run a good amount, obviously, to spare his finger even more. And then you look at the Houston game, the most accurate example that you can provide. He's not running as much as many people expect him to, a 24-8 disparity, and I think that that's pretty solid. If you think about it in general, and put that over a 16 game sample.
So, Rohan, it's interesting, okay? Jalen Hurts, who was playing tonight, everyone on the timeline as we are talking are saying, "Oh my God, Jalen Hurts looks freaking amazing!" Right? They're like literally on the timeline saying he looks amazing, right? Well, let me tell you guys something. Jalen Hurts, so in 2020, his rookie year, when he started taking over, I believe that was for Carson Wentz started taking over. Jalen Hurts had 1 game of 18-yard rushes, 1 game of 11-yard rushes. His second year in the league, which you would think a quarterback's already starting to develop his second year, especially when he had a lot of game time right under him.
Yeah.
He had 1 game, 18, 13, 10, 13, 10. So it's like, I understand not wanting to run your quarterback a lot. But then if you look again at Detroit, that game against Detroit last week, you guys want to know how many times he ran the ball?
How many?
Take a guess.
Let's just go. I know the amount, so because I actually I saw the stat box for that game, but you guys are going to be surprised by the amount. Go ahead and spoil it.
17.
17. Yeah.
17 rush attempts. So we're sitting here, right? 49er fans are sitting here.
By the way, he averaged I think over 9 rushes per game in a 15 game sample last year. I don't think Trey Lance eclipses that amount.
17 times 7. Okay. He's on pace. Even if he doesn't rush that many times today, he's on pace for, if we're going off of the first game, right? 289 rush attempts. Yet we're sitting here arguing that Kyle Shanahan was using Trey Lance too much in the run game. Like, it doesn't make sense, because people are saying Jalen Hurts is used perfectly, yet they're saying Kyle Shanahan didn't use Trey Lance the right way. Like, that does not make sense. How is one quarterback used perfectly because he doesn't get hurt? That's the only reason why they're saying this, because he hasn't gone hurt, injured with a gruesome injury. I hope Jalen Hurts doesn't get hurt. That's not what I'm trying to say or anything, but how does that work? One player gets hurt and he's used wrong, one player is working for him, they're winning, he's playing great, and they're using him perfectly. Does not make sense.
Yeah, I mean it's a freak injury. That's really what I got to say about it, right? If this is the issue now, right, with Lance, people are gonna call him injury prone because he's had a number of injuries now. He's got a finger injury, a knee sprain, and now this. When a number of those were just freak injuries. That's like it's unfair to the kid who's now going to go into his third year where he essentially has a prove it year, given that the 49ers have to make a decision on their fifth year option. I assume they automatically pick it up, given that they invested as much as they did. But it's a prove it year in his third year, in which it's going to be his first year playing real football in 3 years.
And I think that what they'll end up having him do, they'll have him go to the virtual reality. They'll have him get in there, get a lot of reps that way because so Trey Lance he'll be fully healthy, depending on how the injury heals. It could be January, it could be the first couple weeks of March. Now, if you look at how he heals, you could have him essentially in January because you're obviously virtual reality. If you're not running, you're not doing anything, but you're still going through the motions. You're going through your reads, you're going through your progressions, you're throwing the ball. So depending on how that ankle heals, you could have him doing a lot of that. It's worked for Tom Brady. Jimmy Garoppolo has done it in New England. I believe Josh Allen has done it, right? So a lot of these quarterbacks have done the virtual reality method, and it's actually working. So what do you think about allowing Trey Lance to go virtual reality while he's off to get those game-like reps? Because obviously the closest he could get to those is virtual reality until he could do actual throwing stuff. But even then, when he's doing his throwing stuff, he's not going to get 22 dudes on the field and actually have them rushing and stuff.
I think that's a solid idea, really. Any way that he can further his development while being sidelined, I think that really that's a solid idea for Trey Lance. And if it's worked for other quarterbacks, I don't see an issue in trying it out.
So, Rohan, expectations for the remainder of the season with the 49ers being led by Jimmy Garoppolo. Do you kind of say they're going to be up and down? Do you think they make it to the NFC Championship, Super Bowl? What do you think happens with this 49ers roster now?
Surprisingly, I think expectations are now clearer because while we all have high hopes for Trey Lance, there was expectations that he'd have his ebbs and flows, and it was uncertain to where the 49ers would really be over a 17-game season. Now with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm, I do think the 49ers are playoff contenders. I do think they'll make the playoffs, although I don't think they're going to potentially be it's not that they won't be considered Super Bowl contenders, but I think that their championship window for 2022 is now more limited.
Okay, I definitely I get what you're saying. Kind of gives you a more of an understanding on what a veteran quarterback should be able to do and what he is known.
Correct. There's more game film on him, more understanding on him, which is both good and bad because you understand what he's capable of doing, but you also understand the limitations.
And it's very interesting because the reason why I asked this is because a lot of people are saying Super Bowl or bust, which I agree. Okay. And the reason why I'm going to agree on this is because a lot of 49er fans have said, and even the big time media, that Jimmy Garoppolo gives them the best opportunity to win. The best opportunity to win is now on the field. If according to a lot of people, I'm not going to say everyone, according to a lot of people, the best opportunity to win is now on the field. So now that you're telling me that that's a Super Bowl roster, right? They've been saying it's a Super Bowl roster. Now you have a Super Bowl worthy quarterback. If you don't win it, it's a wasted season in terms of what ends up happening, right? Because now you lost unfortunately, you lose a year of development from Trey Lance, like you said earlier. You lose Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to walk in free agency no matter what. Getting the team to the playoffs alone is going to get him a fairly nice paycheck because that defense is going to be playoff caliber. They're going to take them to they're going to take them to the playoffs. That run game is going to be playoff caliber. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the season develops. But I would say Super Bowl or bust.
I mean, I think that that's a fair analysis given that, you know, the goal is obviously a Super Bowl. You've seen what happens with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it is a fair analysis. I like I can say Super Bowl or bust, but am I going to be disappointed if the season doesn't end as a Super Bowl? Not necessarily, because I do still value the development of players, and I really just want to see this team uh, do as best as they can do in 2022. Really be in a position where they can attract new players as well, and then turn that corner in 2023 if it's not achieved in 2022. Because to me, I think if there's a Super Bowl, that's a great thing, right, for the 49ers, but it also complicates matters. And I'm not saying let's not get a Super Bowl. I'm going to be, regardless of who plays, regardless of my feelings towards those players, and me personally, I don't have the feelings that you guys have towards Jimmy Garoppolo. Still think he's a serviceable starter in the NFL. I still think that he's capable of leading teams to the playoffs. I just don't know the impact that he has on games compared to other quarterbacks in the NFL as well. And obviously his ceiling is limited. So we'll see where the 49ers go this year in the standings. I do expect them to make the playoffs. I think that in a way is more solidified now just because we've seen Garoppolo do it before when healthy. And so that's my expectation. How far they go from there, that's yet to be remained.
Rohan, I appreciate you for going 40 minutes strong. It sucks to see Trey Lance go down. Sucks to see a quarterback who is trying to develop, become a franchise player, go down the way it went down. Now, everyone, and I'm going to say this because people might be like, oh, Marco's such a Jimmy hater. Marco hates Jimmy. I think Jimmy is a good quarterback. He just hasn't proven to be good enough to win it all. He's had the opportunity,
Correct.
and he has played pretty poorly in the playoffs, including the Super Bowl. Now, what I want to say is I am behind Jimmy Garoppolo to win because I'm a 49ers fan. I want to see a Super Bowl. But I'm also a realist. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, Niners are winning it all. That's not me. I'm not gonna say that every year. And I think that's where I draw the line and say I think the 49ers make it into the playoffs. And I think Jimmy is gonna be a reason why they lose in the playoffs. I think their defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense. This is the best defense I've seen from the 49ers, and they actually have had some pretty damn good defenses under my during the time I've been alive. So that's what I wanted to say about Jimmy. Any final closing thoughts on anything, Rohan?
It's a gloomy victory Monday. That's the closing thoughts. That's just really how you say you feel for Trey. This team's got to now move forward. Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter for 2022, been confirmed by multiple people. And now the 49ers are going to go into Denver with a new quarterback, and we'll see what happens going forward.
That's it for today's episode, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you are subscribed to both channels, Rohan's personal channel as well as our 49ers Red Zone podcast channel. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify. You can find Rohan writing articles on Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin Badgers, right? Because of the Badgers.
Yeah, Badgers.
He covers college football there. He does 49ers Web Zone. You guys can find some articles from me covering the Stanford Cardinal at All Cardinal Country. That's where I'm putting some more of my writing content out there for college sports. But that's it for today's episode. Rohan, I appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you all for appreciate it.